So, there's a point for the video, and the point is, would that kind of solution really work? And it's great when you speak to children about this, and they cling on straight away, well, the ice will melt, the sea levels will rise, and it's not going to work. And then you think about that, well, where is all that ice? Well, it's in Antarctica. What if Antarctica melts? The same thing will happen. The idea that the sea levels will rise. And the thing is that the ice in Antarctica is actually on land, it's not in the sea. There are the ice shelves as well, but most of the ice is in the land. And when the ice shelves break away, all those glaciers will rush in out of the land into the sea. And it's the same thing, they will melt and therefore raise sea levels. And this is the nice graph from ice core samples. Remember the glaciologists have said in the beginning. And it looks at the variation of CO2. It's quite a famous graph, but there's lots of controversy with this in terms of does CO2 follow the rise in temperature, or does the rise in temperature follow the rise in CO2? There's a big question still on this. However, no one denies that the more CO2 we have, the warmer it gets. So that's the ice core sample there. And this is a picture of the vulnerability of sea levels rising. You can see most of the coast here, and in these regions here, where you've got lots of low-level areas, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, the coast of China, so extreme risk of flooding because of the changing sea levels in the future. So Madagascar, Mozambique. I'm surprised they didn't put Egypt here, I suppose. But so the whole world is at risk of getting somehow submerged, which will be awesome. People migrating, less food, fights everywhere. Migrating. So we also did some experiments with nanoparticles on clothing, and Lindsay wore one pair of socks with silver nanoparticles and another sock without silver nanoparticles for 1 week, then bagged it up and brought it to the lab, and did some AR, some plates with it as well, looking at the different bacteria growth. And the one with more bacteria is the one without the silver nanoparticles. So silver nanoparticles do kill the bacteria. The problem she found is that it does not attack the smell as much as the bacteria. So she also sees merino wool is a much better kind of, I don't want to say absorber of smell, or keeps the smell, less bad. And we did some ultraviolet radiation work as well. So I want to show you a picture of the ozone layer when we were there. So that's a picture of the ozone layer in December 2010. And this is very little ozone. No ozone, more ultraviolet radiation through. More ultraviolet radiation through means very dangerous. So the work I've done was about skin cancer and trying to educate people about different types of skin cancer. Redness, no blindness as well. There's some people that were running the Antarctic marathon while we were there, and one guy ran part of the marathon without the glasses and got retina burn, and he was blinded for a very long time. He did end up recovering partial sight. And of course, the impact on animals is also another big question mark. They can see near ultraviolet, but they're not sensitive to UVB, so it could damage their retina. Like I mentioned, reduced phytoplankton because of the levels of UVA and UVB. And the sunscreen protects in different things. Just because you're doubling the sunscreen number doesn't mean it doubles your protection. The sunscreen is a physical barrier as well as a chemical barrier. So not only does it reflect the sunlight, but it also absorbs and changes the chemistry of the sunscreen. But the problem is the sunscreens are photosensitive, which means they change its chemical structure, therefore become less effective. That's why the other side of the bottle they say you can reapply, because you have to reapply because it changes its structure. And of course, the thinner the layer, the less protected you are, because it's also a physical barrier. I'll jump back. So this is a graph from the spectrometer I took. So the yellow one is the UK, The black one is a graph of the sun spectra of in Antarctica during the shade, when there was clouds everywhere, and this is when there was no clouds. You can see the region we're interested in is this bit here, where the black and the green are higher than the yellow, which means the ultraviolet and the UVA and the UVB band are very, very high compared to the UK. Even in Antarctica when there is no sun, where there's clouds everywhere. So you got to plaster yourself with sun cream. And snow reflection, so the snow reflection is about half of the intensity of the sun gets reflected from the snow. So if you're going skiing somewhere, make sure you're wearing protection as well, because the snow. A lot of people get sunburned skiing because they're focusing on what they're doing, and then all their reflection is going in, and that's not very good as well. The sunglasses. So this is the sunglasses we wore in Antarctica. We all had different brands, and they all work quite well in the ultraviolet area, which is what we want. And here in the red end of the spectrum, you get quite a lot of light going through as well. And the blue one, you can see, remains low quite a lot. I can't remember what brand that is. It's in my notes. But it is quite interesting to see the difference. And the sunscreens as well, so that's some of the stuff I've done. You can see they flattens out the UV, so it's quite a visible layer that I use. Same standard as they use to test sunscreens here in the UK on the machine, which thinks about 3 grams per a particular area where you spread out. So you can see these other two here are sunscreens. They'll factor 5, I think. So I'll just jump on this skin cancer stuff so we can finish off. It's important. This is a UV spectra of the tanning bed and other sources. So the tanning bed has a very high index of UV, which is not very good for you. So please don't go tanning bed. And this is the skin cancer ABCD. So asymmetry, very important. Look at the border if it's not regular. The color changing throughout the spot that you've got, and diameter as well being not very uniform, you've got to get it checked. So even though this one looks nasty, it's not necessarily a bad melanoma. So to finish it off, I want to show you this video about ultraviolet, so we can learn a little bit more about the problems with the skin.
As well as protecting you from drying out, your skin also protects you from the sun's radiation. The darker your skin, the more protection you have. But we're all vulnerable if we stay in the sun too long. Ultraviolet radiation breaks down the DNA in skin cells. Your skin responds by flooding the area with blood to repair the damage. This heats up the skin and produces the familiar redness of sunburn.
Crazy stuff, huh?
But there can also be long-term damage. I used to get horribly sunburned when I was a child. And since then I've also had years of heavy sun exposure. You can see it in the fine lines and the wrinkles on my face. But if you really want to see the damage that's been done, it's best to compare it with my daughter, who is many decades younger. Kate is 11 and has had much less exposure to sunlight. What do you think the most obvious differences between our skin is?
Well, yours is, don't be mean, but yours is more wrinkly.
So my skin is obviously wrinklier, but also try doing this. Try pinching your skin and let it go. Yours springs straight back, doesn't it?
It's really weird.
My skin's lost the elasticity it once had. She's a little bit sad. This sagginess is caused by a loss of collagen beneath the skin. Yours just shoots down. And it's made worse by too much sunlight. But I want to show you something else. Put on these glasses and prepare to be surprised because we're going to look at our faces under ultraviolet light. By using the same ultraviolet light that does the damage, you can see the hidden effects of exposure to the sun. Basically, your face is just sort of pale, which suggests that your skin isn't damaged in any way. There's hardly any splodges at all. Whereas mine is a sort of grey patchwork of strange different colours. The dark areas suggest skin damage. And you can only really see it under the special light. If you look at my nose, this is all damage that's accumulated over the years. Bit spooky looking at it. Ooh, it's a bit horrible. Whereas your skin, I have to say, is in very good nick. We can choose whether or not to expose ourselves to the sun's rays.
So there you go. So quite important to protect ourselves. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've got any questions or if you want to try the clothing, please do. And take some pictures as well. It'll be fun. Okay. Awesome. Thanks very much.